The largest stones ever cut by human beings are sitting in a quarry in Lebanon. They have never moved. One of them weighs over 1,200 tons. The largest mobile crane in the world today can lift 3,000 tons, under ideal conditions, on purpose-built foundations, after months of preparation. The people who cut these stones had no cranes, no steel, no hydraulics. They had rope, wood, the muscle of people and animals. And here's the question that has troubled engineers and archaeologists for 2 centuries. If they couldn't move these stones, and they clearly couldn't, because the stones are still there, how did they move the others? Because less than a kilometer away, 3 stones nearly as large are sitting in a wall, perfectly placed, perfectly fitted, 6 meters above the ground. Someone moved them. Someone lifted them. Someone placed them with joints measured in millimeters. How? That question has never been satisfactorily answered. By the time we're done tonight, you'll understand exactly why that's so strange. The site. In the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, there is a temple complex called Baalbek. The Romans built there. Massive columns, elaborate temples. One of the grandest religious complexes of the empire. But the Roman temple doesn't sit on Roman foundations. It sits on something older. Something the Romans found already there. Something that even they, with all their engineering genius, could not improve on. And that something, the lower platform the Roman temple rests on, is where the real mystery begins. The Trilithon below the Roman temple, in the western retaining wall of the platform, there are 3 stones. 3 limestone blocks placed end to end in a single course of the wall. Each one is approximately 19 to 20 meters long, 4 meters tall, 3.5 meters wide. Each one weighs between 800 and 1,000 tons. These 3 blocks are called the Trilithon, from the Greek for 3 stones. They are the largest stones ever used in any construction project in human history. Not a figure of speech, a straightforward statement about the archaeological record. No building anywhere, not the pyramids, not Stonehenge, not any structure in any era of human history, incorporates single-worked stones this large. For context, the heaviest stones at Stonehenge weigh about 40 to 50 tons. The question of how Neolithic people moved them has been studied seriously for decades. The heaviest granite blocks in the Great Pyramid weigh roughly 60 to 80 tons. A Trilithon block is 10 to 15 times heavier than the largest pyramid stones. 10 to 15 times. And these 3 blocks are not on the ground. They sit 8 meters above the modern ground level, positioned in the wall with tight joints and perfect alignment, flanked above and below by courses of smaller stones. They weren't dragged to their position along the ground. They were lifted. 1,000 tons. Lifted. Placed with millimeter precision. Here's the comparison that never leaves my mind. In 1770, the Russians moved a stone called the Thunderstone to serve as the base of a famous statue in St. Petersburg. It weighed 1,500 tons. Moving it 8 kilometers required a purpose-built mechanical system with bronze sphere rollers, hundreds of workers, and 9 months of effort. It was considered one of the great logistics achievements of the 18th century. The Thunderstone weighs less than twice a single Trilithon block, and there are 3 Trilithon blocks, moved, lifted, placed at height, by people who didn't have the 18th century's technology, by people nobody can fully identify, But the Trilithon blocks are not even the largest stones at Baalbek, not even close. The quarry. About a kilometer from the temple complex, there is a quarry. It has been quiet for approximately 2,000 years. Inside it, there is a stone called the Stone of the Pregnant Woman. 21 meters long, 6 meters tall, weighing between 1,000 and 1,200 tons. It was cut from the bedrock. The bottom, sides, and one end are fully separated. 3 faces complete, and then it was left. For decades, this was considered the largest known worked stone in the ancient world. Then, in 2014, archaeologists from the German Archaeological Institute, conducting a routine survey of the same quarry, found something beneath the surface. Another stone, partially buried, still attached to the bedrock. When they excavated enough to take measurements, what they found changed the scale of the mystery entirely. Approximately 19 meters long, 6 meters wide, 6 meters tall, still connected through a lower section of rock to the Stone of the Pregnant Woman. The 2 stones were being cut from the same block of bedrock at the same time. The newly discovered stone, named the Stone of the South, weighs an estimated 1,250 tons. 1,250 tons. It is the largest worked stone ever found anywhere in human history, and it has never moved. Here's what makes this stranger than just a large stone. The Stone of the South was not abandoned after it was cut. It was abandoned during the cutting. The quarrying stopped mid-process. The stone is still attached to the bedrock of the quarry floor. The cut surfaces are clean and deliberately worked, but the work simply stopped and never resumed. Someone planned to cut and move a 1,200-ton stone. Someone began a work. Something stopped them. And whatever stopped them happened suddenly enough that the stone was left exactly where it was, in exactly the condition it was in, with the tool marks still fresh. Can Romans explain this? The mainstream attribution for the Trilithon is Roman, and the Romans were genuinely impressive engineers. They built aqueducts, amphitheaters, harbors. They organized massive construction projects across an empire. Roman crane technology, treadmill cranes with compound pulley systems, is documented in ancient texts and depicted in surviving relief sculptures. But here's the problem. Engineering analyses of Roman crane capacity consistently estimate a practical lifting limit in the range of 40 to 60 tons per crane. Even with multiple cranes ganged together, the structural limits of ancient rope and timber impose ceilings well below the Trilithon's weight. The Trilithon blocks weigh between 800 and 1,000 tons each. That's 15 to 20 times the estimated practical limit of Roman crane technology. For comparison, hemp rope, the strongest material available, has a tensile strength of about 1 ton per square centimeter of cross-section. The ropes required to even attempt moving a 1,000-ton stone would have been of an extraordinary diameter. Managing them during a coordinated lift would have been a logistics challenge, rivaling the construction itself. The mainstream response: ramps. Build a massive earthen ramp to the required height, drag the stone up, place it. But no trace of ramp construction has been found at Baalbek. The site has been studied for over a century, and no ramp material, no ramp debris, no ramp foundation has been identified. Absence of evidence is not always evidence of absence. Ramps could have been removed and reused, but the absence adds to the accumulation of gaps. And there's a second problem with ramps that is rarely stated simply enough. A ramp capable of supporting a 1,000-ton stone at the required angle would have been an enormous engineering project in its own right, possibly comparable in scale to the wall being built. After the stone was placed, the ramp would have had to be demolished and the material removed. No evidence, no debris, nothing. The Trilithon was placed at height, precisely. And whatever mechanism accomplished that left no trace. The even bigger question. Here is the question that the engineering problem obscures. Why are the Trilithon blocks this size? The retaining wall could have been built with smaller stones. The platform could have been made structurally stable with blocks in the 10 to 30-ton range, the size used everywhere else in the same wall. Using stones 30 times heavier than necessary isn't engineering logic. It's a choice. Someone decided to make these stones as large as they are. The dominant mainstream interpretation, statement of power. Very large stones demonstrate ambition, divine favor, the might of whoever commissioned the work. But here's what undermines that interpretation. The Trilithon blocks are almost invisible from outside the temple complex. They're in the interior of the retaining wall. Visitors standing on the temple platform can't see them. Visitors approaching from the outside see a wall, not the individual stones that compose it. If the purpose was to impress, there were far more visually effective ways to use the same effort. So what was the purpose? One possibility: earthquake resistance. The Bekaa Valley is seismically active. Lebanon sits at the junction of 3 tectonic plates. The 551 CE earthquake devastated much of the Levant. The platform, including the Trilithon, has survived 2,000 years of seismic activity largely intact. The Roman columns above? 6 of the original 54 remain standing. But the lower platform? Essentially undamaged. A 900-ton stone doesn't respond to an earthquake the way a course of smaller blocks does. Its inertia is too great. It moves as a unit, or not at all. Whoever chose to use stones this size chose a construction method that has been extraordinarily durable under real seismic conditions. Was that understood in advance? Was the choice of very large stones partly motivated by earthquake resistance? We don't know. But the result is that the oldest, most mysterious part of the construction is also the part that has survived best. Who built this? The tool marks on the quarry stones are consistent with iron tools, specifically iron picks of the kind available in the Iron Age and later periods. This is one argument for Roman or Hellenistic dates. But iron tools in this region appear from approximately 1200 BCE. The tool mark evidence places the quarrying in the Iron Age, or later, consistent with Roman dates, but not specifically confirmatory of them. The site of Baalbek has been sacred since at least the Bronze Age. Ceramics from 3000 to 2000 BCE have been found in the deepest excavation layers. Some researchers argue the sacred tradition extends into the Chalcolithic, thousands of years before the Romans, thousands of years before the Phoenicians. If the platform was built in phases across a very long span of time, each culture inheriting and expanding what came before, the question of who built the Trilithon becomes genuinely difficult. The most conservative alternative, the lower platform, predates the Roman construction and was built by Phoenician engineers in a period where the organizational and technical context is less understood. The Phoenicians were the indigenous culture of this region before the Romans, The name Baalbek is Phoenician, city of Baal. The sacred tradition here is demonstrably pre-Roman. But Phoenician construction doesn't typically involve stones in the Trilithon range. We have examples of Phoenician engineering, Sidon's harbor, Tyre's city walls, and none of it approaches this scale. If the Phoenicians built the Trilithon, they were operating at a level without parallel in anything else they left behind. Which brings us back to the core problem. Whoever built this was doing something that has no close parallel in any other known construction tradition, in any era, in any culture. The knowledge required to quarry, transport, and place stones of this weight, at this precision, at this height, was real. It was exercised. It left a result that has stood for 2,000 years. And then it was lost. Not through catastrophe, not through sudden collapse, through the ordinary quiet process by which specific technical knowledge disappears when the people who hold it are gone. Roman concrete capable of surviving 2,000 years of seawater was forgotten. The formula for Greek fire was lost. Knowledge that seemed permanent turned out to be fragile. The knowledge of how to work with stones at Trilithon scale may be the same kind of loss. Specific, transmitted person to person, gone when the last person who held it died. That possibility doesn't require aliens, doesn't require a lost civilization. It just requires acknowledging that our knowledge of ancient engineering is incomplete, which the Trilithon, sitting in its wall, quietly insists it is. The abandoned project. Now back to the quarry, the stone of the pregnant woman, the stone of the South, and the work that stopped. 2 stones being cut from the same block. A plan for something that would have exceeded the Trilithon. And then, nothing. The cut surfaces are clean. The tool marks are deliberate. This wasn't abandoned because of failure. There's no evidence of a mistake. No cracked stone, no structural problem. No reason written into the rock itself for why the work stopped. Something external stopped it. What? War, political collapse, the death of the patron, an earthquake, a change of priorities. We don't know. But whatever it was happened fast enough that the workers left the stone exactly as it was, mid-process, without cleaning up, without covering the cut faces, without any apparent expectation that the work would continue. The decision to stop was sudden, and it was final. Here is the detail that makes this haunting. The stones in the quarry were cut to specific dimensions, not approximate dimensions, specific ones, consistent with a plan that already knew what sizes it needed, which means the plan for placing them was already worked out before the cutting began. Someone designed something that would have required moving a 1,200-ton stone. They planned it in detail. They committed the resources to begin it. They started cutting. And then they stopped. Was the plan overambitious? Did they calculate the logistics and realize it couldn't be done? Or were they interrupted before they reached that realization? We can't tell which, and the inability to determine whether the work failed or was simply stopped, whether the engineers hit a wall or were pulled away before they could, is perhaps the most human thing about this entire mystery. The stone's still waiting. There is a quality to the quarry at Baalbek that is different from most ancient ruins. Most ancient remains feel finished. Things built, used, and then lost to time. The quarry stones feel interrupted. The stone of the South is not a ruin. It is a stone that was in the process of being made when the making stopped. The surface is worked. The cut is clean. It was not abandoned in failure. It was ready to be moved. And it was left as if someone intended to return. They didn't. The largest stones ever cut by human hands are sitting in a quarry, a kilometer from one of the greatest temple complexes of the ancient world. Not broken, not damaged, not structural failures. Ready. Just waiting. For the answer to a question that has been open for as long as anyone can determine. How did they plan to move something that size? The answer may be in unexcavated layers beneath the platform, in unstudied tool marks on the quarry walls, in analytical techniques not yet applied to the stone surfaces. Or it may be gone, carried only in the minds of the people who made these stones. And when those people were gone, the answer went with them, leaving only the stones themselves. Enormous, precise, perfectly cut, waiting in a silence that has lasted for 2,000 years, possibly much longer than that, still waiting for an answer worthy of what they are.